So it's just been like part of my DNA to like want to make people happy, want to make people feel appreciated and loved. Nothing gives me the biggest fulfillment from seeing people feeling held and seen, feeling a sense of belonging and feeling celebrated. And that fills me so much that it keeps making me want to do more and more.
When you're the first one to arrive in the space and it's the first two people that don't know each other, it's just awkward. You don't know where to go, you don't know where to do, you don't feel comfortable. So I always just ask very simple tasks. Not because I actually need them done, but because I want someone to come in and feel like they have a purpose.
But I realize it's such a universal human needs to be part of something, to be part of a tribe. And that needs will never go away.
Yeah, I love that. I think the important thing here is the idea of doing something together creates community. It's a shared purpose, even if it's to make a meal, even it's, whatever it is to create a space. Something I'll also do is if I know someone's good at something or known for something, I'll invite them to share that during the event. Welcome everyone to the Community Building Podcast. I'm Joe Che. I'm here with Edric Subur. And he is the founder of Warm Space, which is a platform for guided conversations for companies to bring greater connection. And Edric is someone that if I am not facilitating a connection exercise, it needs to be him. And he's someone that I've known for many years and someone that I greatly admire as a person who shows up in this world with so much heart and joy and playfulness and authenticity. And that's really hard to find. And you've been building communities for a long time now. And I think you're a community building addict like me. And it's been interesting to be sharing stories over the years and just seeing the beautiful things that you've done, from creating community around your birthday. It's basically a festival for many years, to just everywhere you go, you're doing it. Even when we went to a festival together, we went to Wonderfruit together, and you were, making efforts to build community. It was a little weird at one point. We're standing everyone's trying to take drugs, and we're trying to connect people in connection circles and do exercises and by loud music. But I see your heart, I feel your heart, and it's just something that I resonate so deeply with. So I'm really excited that you're here. You're coming in for a wedding into Bali and for joining us on the Community Building Podcast. And first question I want to ask you is, why? Why so much energy in doing something and bringing people together? And I know how much work it is, and generally how little money comes out of that, right? It's usually a gift from the heart. So why?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Joe, for the beautiful introduction. I see so much of myself in you. So hearing that words from you, someone I also admire in doing what you do really good at, like community building and connecting people and building ventures, means a lot. So thank you for that. So why community building? I don't know. I think I like to say it's just been part of my DNA. Since as long as I can remember, back in high school, I was the one who always think of a way to do a birthday surprise for every single person in the class. It was a big class back in Indonesia. The high school classroom average size is 50, 60 people. So I look at whose birthday is coming soon and then think of different ways to surprise them and to delight them. So it's just been part of my DNA to want to make people happy, want to make people feel appreciated and loved. And then I guess, but the word community has never been in my vocabulary until Burning Man in 2019. And I didn't realize that I was just kind of been doing this before I knew what community was. And I kind of lost a sense of myself back in uni, back in corporate life, and kind of just really grinding, working on my career and stuff. And then Burning Man brought me back to who I truly am, who is a connector, who loves to bring people together and make people feel seen and appreciated and loved. And I guess I also just gained so much from doing this, as much as it's a lot of work and energy that I put into doing this. Nothing gives me the biggest fulfillment from seeing people feeling held and seen, feeling a sense of belonging and feeling celebrated. And that fills me so much that it keeps making me want to do more and more. I remember at every end of my birthday festival, I always thought oh, this is a lot of work. leading to the festival, I always thought like, why am I doing this? This is so much work. I'm not doing this for money. Sometimes I put a lot of money up front and losing money, but at the end of it, it's always like, yeah, I have to do this again. Like it filled me so much, and just hearing the impact from others and all the beautiful connections that were made from the spaces, and some romantic connections, beautiful friendships, beautiful collaborations in businesses. Yeah, it just made me feel so full.
Yeah, I know that feeling very well. You know, is it the same for you? For me, it was a lot of this came out of a desire to have people around me that inspire me, that I love, that I resonate with. And I know what it feels like not to have that. You know, I remember being a child and being the one that is carrying his lunch into the room, and there's no place to sit, or at least I had that narrative that I didn't feel like I was in the in crowd. I wasn't getting invited to sit at the tables, or maybe I just wasn't taking the steps and was brave enough just to go sit down, and maybe it would have been fine. But I felt that disconnection. I felt that loneliness, that separation, that unbelonging. And I really realized for me, that's a big reason why I do this, is because one, I don't want anyone else to feel that way, but more selfishly, I don't want to feel that way. So, you know, by creating all of this community around me, it makes it that I have lots of things to do. I have lots of fun things. I have access to connections and intimacy with women, or, you know, I have just like, I feel like I'm on the inside because I've created the actual circle. Right. And so, you know, maybe that I've noticed there's some validation in there also, because it feels good. And I don't think it's necessarily like this bad thing to want to be seen, because you're giving so much love. But I'm curious, like, did you feel that belonging growing up? Did you feel that?
Yeah. So I think back in my university time, that was when I felt that sense of loneliness for the first time, because back in high school and middle school, I was always that popular kid, social butterfly, bringing people together. So I was always surrounded by friends. And then moving to Singapore, it was a totally different culture. I really had a hard time finding my groups, and I resonated with what you said about going to lunch by myself, and like just like this deep yearning of like wanting to be part of something. So I guess, yeah, I think part of it also just acknowledging and being able to relate to what it feels like to be alone and to not feel that sense of belonging anywhere, which drives me to want to create this for myself. And then as a result, it also creates that container for others to be part of something. And actually in my journey, I realized, I remember coming to Bali for the first time and then going to your Bloom festival. And then that was probably my third, fourth month in. So I didn't know a lot of people. I came to Bali without knowing anyone. And then I just saw like everyone like deep in like cuddle puddle, and then like just like being really intimate with each other. And I remember feeling like, wow, I would love to have experienced that as well, and felt lonely also when I was comparing myself to like what I could have experienced. And then I remember when I did my birthday festival here for the first time in Bali, even for those people who already had like groups of friends here, felt like they also found something in this container that I built. And realizing that, because I had this story that as an adult, like yearning for social connections or friendships is kind of like silly or shallow, because, you know, we're like adults, we're not meant to think like that anymore. There's kind of like a high school, college things to have groups of friends. But I realized it's such a universal human needs to be part of something, to be part of a tribe. And that need will never go away. So I realized many people that have like been to my containers, they found like a sense of family that they haven't found anywhere else. Especially in my circle where people are constantly moving from one place to another, it's really hard to feel that you're part of something. Sure, we have a lot of friends, but I think it's very different from feeling like, oh, I have my people that are consistent, people that I can relate to deeply, people I can work with and like have deep conversations with. It's surprisingly, as much as we're so connected these days with social media and everything, it's hard to find this level of depth of connection to be part of something.
So true. Do you feel, so how do you create those containers? You've been doing this for a long time. It sounds like from when you were a kid, basically. And it's funny because for me, if I were to say, so, I've gotten called a cult leader at a couple times. I remember one time I went back to the US and they're like, wait, didn't you move to Bali to start a sex cult? I'm like, what? I'm like, no. I'm like, and then someone else said that and someone else said that. And I don't know how this got spread, but I think it's because of Bloom.
Right.
For those listening, Bali Bloom was a transformative sort of Burning Man meets luxury resort where everyone that was coming in, I think we had like 300 workshops and like in 4 days, and everyone coming in had to contribute a gift of themselves, whether that was to give a workshop, DJ, make art, decorate. And the invitation was to bring whatever really lights you up. What is your true soul purpose, passion? Not what are you known for? And it was beautiful. And like a lot of people made super deep connections that are still going for many, many years.
That was the portal for me. Like
Yeah,
so many beautiful connections that like were sparked from Bloom.
Yeah.
It was a gateway.
And we even have a baby, a Bloom baby that a couple of people met and had. So, and those containers, I learned that from doing community building. And I realized my first community I built was 30 years ago now, Edric. Wow. I'm like, God, I was like, Jesus, it's a long time. It's definitely an addiction.
Good addiction.
Yeah. But what I want to really give the audience is, how do you do it for yourself, right? So what have you learned? What are some tips and tricks? Like someone out there is listening, and let's start with someone that is missing that. They don't feel like they have their tribe, like you said. And I agree. I think that we need that indefinitely, right? We need to feel like we have our heart tribe, our soul resonant people that we feel fully expressed with. And, in the church had that role for a long time, right? Yeah. And now that many of us are moving away from organized religion, there's a organized religion. One thing it does extremely well is it has a good hierarchy and structure for community, right? Mm. So as we move away from that, there's more of a need for us to do it ourselves or to join something else. And I always say, look for something that you resonate with and just plug in your gifts into something pre-existing. But then if that doesn't exist, you got to build it yourself. Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've learned in doing this community building, creating those containers?
Yeah, so something I've learned, because after COVID, I started traveling and moving to a lot of different places, staying in Colombia and Peru for a few months each. And I've learned that every time I always walked away with like a group of people just like swarming around me, and like I have this ability to attract the right people. And I think what it comes down to is, first, like you need to show up to like all this different events to first like recognize who are your people. Like I think the first few weeks or first few months, that's when you're kind of really broadening your social horizon, especially if you didn't know anyone. Best is if you could get someone who is already plugged into the community who can open doors for you, like Bloom, for example. But if not, you just kind of like spread your aim kind of wide, and then find the right people that you really resonate with, and like present yourself in the highest vibes, because good people recognize each other. And as so many times that I just when you go to festivals and then you like just recognize someone who just like have a very similar frequency with you without saying much, you're like, you're my person, you're my people, and the connection just happened very quickly. And that's when you're and that takes some work, like just loving yourself, being proud of who you are, being authentic in the way you express yourself and present yourself, and naturally you start magnetizing the right people to you. And then I think the second step is like being more intentional. Once you recognize who these people are, most likely people that you vibe with, they also vibe with each other. So then the next step is creating a container. It can be as simple as a dinner. Or a lunch or a picnic, something really simple, just like bring people together and have them connect with each other. And what I've found is often meaningful and useful is to add a little bit of structure, a little bit of like a nudge for them a bridge for them to connect meaningfully with each other. Yeah, you can throw a bunch of people in the right space, and they're awesome. Sometimes magic just happens naturally, but I don't really like to leave it to chance. Which also what inspired me to do Warm Space, because back then during COVID, I was running this virtual conference, and then we did this like gamification to get a bunch of really awesome people to share about themselves, because it's I think everyone has some beautiful gems to share about who they are, what they do, their stories, but it's hard to pull this out from them without the right nudge and prompts. So what I like to do when I do these like dinners or like picnics, I sometimes have like a little like opening circle. If it's a small group, then I like to like introduce them, like just to share a few words about why I connect with them, where I met them, just some little stories to get the things going, so that people can connect beyond just like, what do you do? And like, where are you from? And like really opening that doors for like meaningful connection through stories, through prompts. And then the next step is to be consistent. You've hosted one dinner, but what really forms that sense of community is the consistency, like going to events and starting to see familiar faces, and connections, and that sense of familiarity and coziness takes time. So you start hosting more of these things, and then you sometimes inspire other people to do the same. So it doesn't have to be on you totally, especially if you bring the right people who likes to give and contribute. Naturally, if they feel safe and really good around the people in the container, they naturally tend to want to give back, in my observation. So then you can also start leaning into the community to organically form that stronger sense of community.
Yeah, I love that. Let's try to break that down a little bit and maybe go through each of those steps, because I think there's so much wisdom in that I see, and I also recognize the same pattern of building communities. So the first one is go into a space and try to identify your people. So that's step one, right? So let's talk about that. To me, that's pretty easy to understand. You're having conversations, you're being friendly, you're being open. And I would say you're asking some questions that invite a little bit more of being seen and a little bit of vulnerability. And there's a right amount of vulnerability here, right?
Yeah.
And that's an art form, is creating conversations. I remember in Sweden, I was giving the art of conversation, and I talk about like the arc of vulnerability, where in the beginning you want to start light because you're just kind of feeling out people, and then you want to like invite a little bit of vulnerability, and it's like vulnerability testing.
Right.
And then you respond with something that you start to open up more, or then you just get scared and close. Yeah. And if someone closes, you go back down to the lower level of vulnerability. And if someone opens and receives that, then you go for a little while at that level, and you invite a little bit more in. And then, and it's like kind of these like peaks of the art of the conversation is helping people invite in vulnerability. So I just want to ask, I know what question I usually ask when I meet someone. I don't ask them, what do you do for work, right? What do you ask them?
First of all, I like that, because that's something I have to learn the hard way, because the moment I learned about vulnerability, I just like wanted to go deep right away, and then made the mistakes of like dropping the bomb, like asking someone just throw them into the deep end and asking really deep questions. I remember I was at a party once, and I asked someone, like, I forgot what I asked, something around like, some childhood trauma or something like that. And then she looks at me and she goes, this is not therapy. And then she walks away. And then I lost that connection, because I didn't preempt her. I didn't build that trust. So it is a ping pong, and you need to kind of learn to dance around it. So the question that I like to ask usually is, tell me your story. Something a bit like open-ended, or lately when I facilitate these connection exercises, I just ask a very simple question. Tell me, how are you? But really, what's alive? How are you right now? A very simple question but like when you truly mean it, and I guess the way you bring the question up also makes a difference when you're like, hey, how is it going? How are you? Versus like, how are you? And that makes a difference. It indicates that you truly care and you want to know more, and that invites the other person to open up to you.
It's funny. I always wonder, because everyone goes, hey, how you doing? And everyone goes, good. Good, good, good. Always the same answer, right? No matter if they're like going through the hardest time, it's just a natural response. I'm like, why do we do that as human beings? It seems so pointless, right? And I think what it actually is happening is you're saying, I recognize your existence. I know you're here. And I'm just giving you a very soft invitation of like, are you closing your body language or open your body language to me? I think something's happening there. What I like to say is, or one of the questions I like to ask is like, what are you really excited about coming up? Because then instead of being like, what are you doing for work or what projects are you working on? Sometimes they're like, oh, my family's visiting me, or I'm working on this really exciting project. I have this warm space business that, I'm going to Singapore to have a really interesting meeting. I'm excited about that. It just leaves open-ended.
I like that.
And this one is an easy one for me because it doesn't feel so vulnerable, but it's an invitation to share something about yourself. And it's the thing that you're actually excited about. So it's always positive.
Yeah.
Right. So then it creates a good vibe a little bit. So that's one of them that I like to do. But I laugh because I also have had that problem, Edric, where like I'll get into someone and it's like, just go deep in it. You don't ride that arc of vulnerability in the art of conversation. And if you go too fast and be like, hey, nice to meet you. Did your uncle ever touch you? You're just like, what? She's like, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
And I've definitely, stretched. But also for me, if someone's not opening up in that vulnerability arc of the conversation, then it might not be someone that I really want to go, that I really want to invest a lot of time with, because for me, in both of us, we get a lot of exposure to a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of connections in our lives. I mean, if I were to count how many people it's definitely in the tens of thousands for sure over the years. And most of them are people I actually really like, but there's only a handful you can put a lot of energy into. So that's kind of step one is go find one or two people that you really resonate with, right? Yeah. And then your step two is this idea of start inviting them into a container. Is that kind of the step?
Yeah, starting. I think best case scenario, especially if you're new to a city or a container, see if you can get invited to a container first, because you're starting from like zero almost, so you don't really have a lot of like people that you can bring together to start with. But if not, then you initiate it yourself, and to be invited also is. You need to be careful to not make it feel like a very transactional thing, and people can sense that, like, oh, you're trying to impress me so that I can bring you into like all these events. But like, just again, be authentic, be yourself, and naturally people who vibe with you will recognize that and like want you to be around their people because they know that you bring in good vibes. But if it hasn't worked out, or like it takes time sometimes. Like sometimes it's like shooting in the dark, like going to all these events and you can't find the right people that open the doors for you. Then you take take the balls in your own court and start bringing people together and organizing dinners. And again, from what my realization is, most people don't really have that sense of belonging or a tribe. I create this false impression that like, oh, everyone has their people already, especially at this age. People must have their own like cliques or groups already. From my experience, especially in the nomadic circle, like most people are lonely. They don't really have groups, this close group of friends. So when they receive that invitation from you, they really value that. And it's a big gift for them. And most people really appreciate that and put them into a container and introduce them to other amazing people, tell them why you're bringing all these other amazing people. So they sense this is really special that you chose them because you see something in them, and then you see something in all these other people too. So there's like value in these connections.
Yeah. So step one is start finding your people. Try to start going to events, things that you're interested in, commonalities, meet people. And then step two is start either creating the container or entering the container, right? And ideally, this is smart. People already have it. try to find it. And I always say, if something already exists, don't build it again.
Yeah.
Plug in, give of your gifts, etc. One thing that I do that I find really useful is, let's say this example of going to a new country. I'm going to be there for a month or two. What I'll do is I'll just create a broadcast list in WhatsApp for Business, which is a free download. And a broadcast list is something where you just put people inside of a list. And then when you send a message, if they have saved your number, it'll send out a message to each individual, not a group chat. And I find this really useful. So for example, I'm in Canggu, Bali right now. I have a Canggu broadcast list. And what happens is right now there's probably about 105 people on it. So if I'm going to do a connection dinner, if I'm going to have people over from game night, whatever it is, now it's really easy for me to invite people. I just say, hey, do you want to come over for game night? Last minute. It's going to be fun. That's it. And now I can send that to 105 people, and the people that are interested will show up, and the ones that are not will ignore it, or they'll say, hey, thanks for the invite. But it doesn't look like a group chat that you have to follow.
Right. I really like that. I recently just sent out invites for my next birthday retreat, and I spent so much time like thinking about who to invite and then trying to scroll through my list. That would have saved me a really good amount of time.
Yeah. And what happens is every time I meet someone new, if I'm out at an event and I'm like, wow, you're amazing.
Right.
What I do is I connect with them and I send them an automated message, which is like, you can just do / like new friend. And if you just put in / NE, it comes up, you hit the enter, and then it's like, hey, great meeting you. Here's all my Instagram and my email and my contact. And, and I'll give you some invites. Please do the same. Right. So, because I'm in a hyper connector and a little autistic in my processes, I try to make things really fast and easy. So using what are called quick replies inside WhatsApp for Business is also very useful. And then what I'll do, if I really like them, I'll put them in the Canggu chat. And if I meet them in Ubud, I put them in not the chat, if I really like them, let's cut that. If I really like them, I'll put them in the broadcast list for Canggu. And if they're living in Ubud, I'll put them in the Ubud broadcast list. And then when I do is when I send out, before I send out, I check to see who's in there. So I'm not sending to someone that I know moved to Portugal. Right. And I let them know, hey, if this isn't useful, just let me know, and then I'll take them off that list. So it stays live, it stays fresh. And it feels good because then it's easy. So to me, that's like a little hack in building community, is keeping these broadcast lists. And there's other ways to do it. Group chats are really good. Like if you're doing your birthday festival, you probably have a group chat. Yeah. And that makes more sense, right? But there's also a shitload of group chats out there and they can get overwhelming. So you need to make them useful. Yeah. And then you need to police them for spam and self-promotion. And,
yeah. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
I love your system. I think that's really effective. And I joke that I like to go around the world and collect Pokemons. And there's this thing in Pokemon called Pokédex, where you index like all the other Pokemons that you catch. I think you're kind of doing that with the broadcast list. And also, as annoying as group chats are, I love creating groups because even though it's just a one-off dinner, I always create a WhatsApp group because I like to have that space where people can follow up. And even, when they have this amazing conversations or when there's an amazing experience, there's somewhere you can go back to relieve that experience and share, oh my God, I thought of that moment, or like follow up with people that connected deeply with, and they have this like list of people that they can find their context from. So I love them as much as it's annoying for people.
Yeah, and people can leave if they want to leave. I also find them great, but I'm a little bit more cautious now these days because, my God, like the amount of messages I get is insane, and it's a bit overwhelming. And I feel like my main job is WhatsApp right now, is answering messages on WhatsApp and asking favors, people asking me favors quite often. Right. This is something we can talk about. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the easiest ways to start creating community, those containers, right? So you mentioned dinners as an obvious one. Let's go over some other ones that we found to be really good.
Yeah, like hiking. This is a really easy one. It's low effort. You just pick a location, of course, do some research and make sure that it's not too difficult, and then it's within reach for a lot of people. And then you just ask people to meet over there in the location and hang out. Picnic is another really good one. I don't do concerts very often, but like festivals. So when I was in Colombia, I also didn't know a lot of people. And then there's also a lot of like digital nomads. And I like to create a little micro community around festivals, like people who want to go to these festivals together, and then we'll gather in our apartment. We do a little bit of like a connection circle, and I get to know each other and all this like icebreakers. So I think something that gives people you need something that people are bonded by, like a commonality, be it like food, be it like experiences, be it nature, something that draws everyone, where people can experience something together and bond around that experience.
Yeah, beautiful. So other ones I like too, board game nights are really easy and it's very wholesome. Yeah. I don't do concerts anymore because I can't facilitate connection and I can't hear. Right. But that's a very low vulnerability one. And then something I generally do is if I have someone in my community that's a really amazing musician, I'll just do a night where we have some live music, invite people over to encourage them to go up and do a little poem or do a little something, anything that's co-created. Yeah. And I find in community building, when someone can give a gift of themselves, it creates way more belonging a lot quicker because you're sharing of your gift, your passion. And then others get to see you and your gift, your passion, and recognize you and praise you and validate you in those things. And what a beautiful experience to have is to be seen. Yeah. And we'll get into the actually inside the container and delivering the container in a second, or maybe this is the time. So yeah, I would say games night's a good one. I like if we're doing dinners, we'll get into some connection prompts, things like that. Those are useful. I think some other ones is just weekends away for a little trip or just any activity. If you're going to the water park, invite a bunch of people to go. It's way more fun to get a group. And sometimes it starts to snowball and then you got a big group and it's like, whatever you're doing, if you're going to an art gallery, you can invite people. Yeah. But the trick is to make sure, invite them to something that is actually a container that they're not going to like show up and like say hello and then not be able to have any connection with otherwise. Like if you're going to a play and everyone's sitting in different seats, not that interesting, right? So make sure that there's an actual space where people can connect with each other.
Yeah. I think having proper opening and closing of that container is also important. When you have started a container and people are already well warmed up to each other, and then suddenly like random people come in like last minute or like midway through, it changes the vibe. Like you have a very created level of safety. And then I also like to have a little closing, it doesn't have to be formal or like in a ceremonial kind of way. It's just like, oh, let's leave together, or like say goodbye, or it creates a really nice kind of easing in and easing out for a lot of people, and to kind of build this connection from.
Yeah, let's go into this section of like managing the container, right? Which is that step 3 we're on, or is that? Yeah. Okay, we'll call it step 3. 3.5. 3.5. So, invite people to the container. Now the container begins. Let's talk about the little tips that we know to make the actual community, to basically expedite the community forming, right? Yeah. So you already talked about openings and closings. Let's start with the opening, right? What are some of your ways or tips and tricks to open those containers?
Yeah, I like to even start before the opening, like pre-opening, the official opening, like what you do for your retreat, for example. You get people to very simple things like introduce themselves in the group. So like get people to warm up to like get ready, get excited for what they're about, the container they're about to enter. For my birthday festival last year, 2 weeks prior to the event, I hosted a warm space event, like an hour virtual pre-connection facilitated by the platform. So like when people walk into the container, their nervous system is already like relaxing because they know some faces are already familiar. I think that's what you want, to make sure that people feel safe and familiar and comfortable when they enter a new space. Because I've, even as a social butterfly, when I enter a new container, I still feel like nervous when I didn't know anyone. Like, oh, who can I speak to? How do I present myself? So I think it's really important to make people feel comfortable around the new faces in the container. And then at the opening, I like to make sure that everyone knows each other, even as simple as, hey, this is someone that I met from, this is Joe that I met from this festival. Like, it creates that little like familiarity and a sense of like curiosity. Oh, why this person interesting? I like to mention a bit of tidbit that kind of puts them into this, that makes them like interesting, that people have something that people can inquire about. And then, yeah, I like to create like this little connection, prompts. Like at my birthday festival, I gave people like a connection bracelet, love language bracelet. They get to choose out of 3 love languages: touch, or like words of affirmation, or quality time. So there's something you can, it brings up conversation. It draws people in, and then there's something you can connect around. And then within the container itself, I think as long as you have like an activity, I think it was once people are warmed up around each other, things can kind of almost like flow naturally. But of course, you can also, as an advanced community leader, you tend to want to facilitate the interactions when you see someone is bragging too much about themselves, or like the conversation is going a little bit too heavy. You want to steer that and kind of navigate that so that everyone is always on this like good vibes. Everyone doesn't feel like the conversations dynamics and group dynamics are not equal. So it takes some work and energy, but I noticed these little things does make a difference in how people feel when they leave the container, knowing that they're kind of held and they're in good hands. Yeah, and then the end, just to do a really nice closing, get people to share a few words of how they feel. Doesn't have to be that formal. Again, either depends on the context. Let's say if it's just a casual dinner, people can naturally like fizzle out, but like give them a little cue that things are kind of ending, and then people can slowly ease out of the container.
Yeah, I want to start a little bit because I like this. We have a step, which is the pre-container, which is warming up or getting people excited, or some like super short introductions, which is just creating some pre-connections. Oh yeah, you shared that you love scuba diving in the chat, right? Just say one thing that you love to do, and then they see a face, and it gives permission to approach someone. Oh, I saw that you love scuba diving in the chat. I also love scuba diving. I'm going next weekend. It's like almost conversation starters. And then what I would say is, like, at the beginning, I actually start the connection when people are arriving, because not everyone arrives at the same time.
Right.
So a couple little tips and tricks that I would give is, depending on the type of the event, is I always leave a few simple tasks undone before, if I'm throwing an event, which might be as lighting the candles or helping pour drinks. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but when I was doing a lot of events around alcohol, I would not have the glasses out or not have the bottles opened, because when you're the first one to arrive in the space and it's the first 2 people that don't know each other, it's just awkward. You don't know where to go. You don't know where to do. You don't feel comfortable. So I always just ask very simple tasks, not because I actually need them done, but because I want someone to come in and feel like they have a purpose.
Right.
And then one of the things I usually ask is, hey, when people arrive, can you help them? Would you be open to helping them put their coats away? Just telling them where to put their shoes and coats. Yeah. Because now that first person that's arrived has a task. They have a role. And people tend to feel more belonging when they have a role. So now And they don't always want to do it, and it doesn't matter, right? The idea is it's just an invitation. So I always leave little things undone. So that way they have something to do.
Yeah.
Then as people start arriving, I generally will start introductions. So I'll be like, oh, Edric, this is Susie. Susie is a longtime friend. We did this trip in Mexico together. I don't give long introductions, just 1 or 2 points that I think will be a good point of connection if I know them. So now I can leave them, they can keep talking.
Yeah.
And then as someone new comes in, oh, let me introduce you to Edric and Susie. And then we get the third person in. And so groups start to naturally form. And there's like that, a little bit of that, like a little push of, hey, yeah, you belong.
Yeah, yeah.
And here's some connection points. It doesn't need to be awkward. Because if I go into space and that doesn't happen, I'm just like, I check my phone or just whatever, I just feel weird.
Yeah.
So like whatever you can do to create space, to give them something to do when they arrive, that sets the vibe. Because now when someone else comes in, there's people talking, then it's easy to go over and say hello, and you just kind of do this, and then it starts to naturally unfold before the event starts.
Right. I really like that. That's a very advanced technique and very thoughtful of you. I've accidentally done that where I saw how meaningful it was coming into a space and knowing that you have something to do because I really needed help in that moment. But for you to kind of intentionally leave something undone so that you give people purpose, that's the next level. No, it's right. Like when you enter a space without knowing anyone, and it's kind of like awkward. And I've also learned that people like to be helpful. When you give them like tasks to do, people are like, okay, like I'm on it. Like I want to do something.
Yeah.
And
chop vegetables, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Another thing that I've also learned is as a community builder, and both of us are big givers, right? Like I tend to want to do everything on my own. I want to make sure when people come to my space, the food is all prepared, all the decorations and the lighting, everything is perfect. And sometimes I ended up burning out. So now I've learned that to lean into the community and ask for help, and people love contributing. Hey, can you bring the candles? Can you bring this from the grocery store? Can you come a little bit earlier to help me cook? And that actually creates bond as well. People bond a lot in the preparation because they feel like first like you're doing something together for a shared purpose, and then they also feel that they're part of this container even more because they really contributed to shape this container.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the important thing here is the idea of doing something together creates community. It's a shared purpose, even if it's to make a meal, even it's, whatever it is to create a space. Something I'll also do is if I know someone's good at something or known for something, I'll invite them to share that during the event. Oh, you're a poet. How would you feel about sharing just like a 3-minute piece? You're a musician. Do you want to play like one of your 3-minute originals? Whatever. Or do 1 or 2 songs. Not because it's a beautiful gift to experience someone playing a song, but it creates this vibe of like, not only do you belong, you have a purpose, you're seen.
Yeah.
Right? And now I want to talk a little bit about the connection exercises, right? So what I'll generally do, depending on the type of event, is I'll actually give these prompts. And I know that you do the same. And we've done this together in yachts in Croatia and in Bali and other events. And it's something I love about you is you're always doing that. And so, let's talk about some ways in the art of initial connection prompts. Because it is absolutely an art form. Yeah. It's one I'm still honing, especially around dinner parties. Exactly. Right, yeah. So I'd love to hear some of maybe your view on the art of connection prompts, or the first connection prompt, not the whole, connection exercise, authentic relating, but just the casual light one is, if you come into a space.
Yeah. So I like to customize it. It depends on the context and the container. Like for my partner and I started Conscious Couples Club recently in Lisbon, and then we host that themed dinner with different relationship topics. And the conversation starter is always changing depending on the theme. For example, the last one was on sex and desire. We asked each couple to share how long they've been together. and a very sexy moment that they have shared, their favorite moment when they have experienced something sexy together. That got really spicy and really exciting right away. The previous one was around the beginnings, which is like share how you two met the first time. And when I did this micro community at festivals when I was in Colombia, I brought all the strangers together, and I always start with share something, 2 truths and 1 lie, or a fun fact. And then I also asked them to share drugs that you're planning to take, because that also gives people, it's a little bit vulnerable and gives people that safety of like, oh, you'll be in the same frequency. So I think the key is to, of course, there are some good ones that 2 truths and 1 lie, an interesting fact about you, but you always want to customize it based on the context so that it becomes relevant and interesting.
Yeah, I love that. The truth, when I just had that when we did this, like I was speaking at this Global Possibility Summit, and they started with the 2 truths and a lie, but everyone did 2 truths and a half truth.
Right.
And that was the lie. But so I almost wonder if maybe that's a more interesting one to do, because then it's like, it's still telling something more about yourself. And I think the things that I think about is the right amount of vulnerability to offer, because you can't go too deep, right? Yeah. In a conscious couples thing, it's a little bit different because you've met a couple times and now you can take them in deeper. The more connected the community is, the more deep, the more vulnerable that you actually want to go, because you're leading them through an arc of vulnerability over time with the communody. Yeah. But
you also need to be mindful of the time and the size of the group. I think we talked about this a lot on the yacht. What I love about you is you're very systematic. You're optimizing to the minutes. Based on the number of people, how many minutes you give to each one of them, we need to be really mindful. I've sit in conscious circles where the closing ceremony, everyone was sharing like how they were impacted by the experience. They ended up going for like an hour or so, and nobody wanted that. So I think a good community leader needs to have a really good sense of the room and what's the right amount of like nudge to give people that permission to share and to be seen, but not too much where people will lose engagement and attention.
Yeah, like I do a connection dinner. And I do really the first prompt, I say, okay, in 30 seconds, say your name, where you're from, how long you've been in Bali, and then I'll give something else like that shows a little bit about themselves, something you're really excited about right now, or I use that one, or whatever it is, so that when we go around, and most people only use about 15, 20 seconds of that, but we have up to 30 seconds. And so what I'll do is, and people's attention can last for 30 seconds when you're going around quick. And if you multiply that, that's about 7 minutes, 8 minutes, max 10 minutes for a bigger group. People can take that. And it's good, because what I've learned is you have to be seen and heard in front of the entire group in order for you to begin your belonging process. So I want to say that again. When community building, you need to be seen and heard by the entire group before you can begin your belonging process, for you to start feeling like I belong to this group. So in Bali Bloom, we had 150, 300 people, and I still went around and everyone said your name and one sound, and it went quick. That is literally a few seconds. I'm Joe. I'm Edric, whatever it is. And it was just, even though it still took 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get around, it creates a sense of belonging to start an event, a festival. Now, if it's more intimate, we want to go much larger. So basically, the larger the group, the shorter it needs to be, right? So your name, a silly sound, your name, and you do a movement, whatever it is.
Yeah. My favorite one recently is come up with an adjective that starts with your initial.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Because it gives people a sense of who you are. And also, you talk about this a lot, about how to remember people's names. Yeah. And then when people can associate your name to something, an adjective that represents who they are, and it also starts with their initial, it helps people remember your name as well. So it's like it kills 2 birds in one stone.
Yeah. So mine would be Joyous Joe or Jolly Joe. And then everyone, maybe they repeat it or don't repeat it. And then Edric would be...
Electric Edric.
Electric Edric. That's a good one.
Energetic Edric. And I've done this in many festivals and containers where at the end of the event, they still like go to someone and go, oh, hey, Joyous Joe. Yeah. So it creates also, it gives me this bridge of connection, and it's playful and it's fun.
Yeah. And I think this is you say, it is true. I talk about remembering names quite a bit. I actually have a PDF on the connectionmap.com called The Art of Remembering Names. And it's free if anyone wants to download that, because there is so much power in remembering someone's name. If I can go up to you next event and be like, Edric, how are you? You're like, I feel seen. I feel remembered. I feel important. Every once in a while, when I'll do an event and I teach the art of remembering names, someone will get really triggered. There's always one person who'll get really triggered. And I had also a friend and they're like, I feel really offended if someone says my name. I feel really uncomfortable when someone says my name. And it's always someone who has issues with vulnerability and intimacy. And for them, it's too intimate. Their name is actually too intimate to be heard. Wow. And it makes them feel uncomfortable because they feel too seen. Which is a different conversation, but most people appreciate if you remember your name. Someone comes up, hey, Joe, how are you? Joe Che, haven't seen you in a while. Yeah. You know? And there's times that I have no idea who they are, right? But oversaturation. Yeah.
That's I mean, I know this is off topic, but it's an interesting concept around like how some people just want to be invincible. They want to walk on the street and not to be known, and they want to go to a party and not really recognized. But I also wonder deep down, is that true? Like, because underneath all of that, I think there's the loneliness of like, you also want to be seen. I think everyone, like you said, wants to be seen. That's a deep universal human need, but it's masked with like a lot of like traumas and like triggers and conditioning. But I think once you crack that open, at the core of all of that, people want connection and belonging and to be seen.
It's like the thing that someone desires most is also their biggest fear. The thing that they're most afraid of, because when you desire something the most, it's the highest risk of rejection and not getting it, which has the highest risk of hurt, of failure. When you don't care, it's easy. When you're like, oh my God, I just admire Edric so much, and like I just want to be his friend, you actually don't show up. The chances of like, I want it so bad. It's the same thing as there's a theory that I put out called the hot girl paradox, and the more that you pedestalize someone and look at them as their value, in the connection map, we call it a star connection. You're looking up to them and you value them so high, and but they're distant and far away, and you just want so much to be close to them. You actually can lose your sense of self in the authenticity of the connection, right, leading to you just being awkward and weird, and not really being your like comfortable free self. So the chances of them actually connecting with you are lower, because you've created this divide in the connection. You've created a star connection. So it's important just to, how do we look at everyone the same, even if we look up to them or whatever. I had this, I remember I was at a very small event with some really amazing people, and Esther Perel was there, and I was starstruck. Right. I was so awkward talking to her, because like I was like, wow, this is someone about human connection and relationships that I think is like one of the best in the world. Yeah. And, and so it's a little starstruck in that, so it's important to, stay in that authenticity to self if you desire that connection, and try to let go a little bit of this, like, oh my God, Edric is such a fucking superstar. Yeah. I want to be close to him so badly. Yeah. And more just be like, how do I show up as myself? And you're more likely to connect. Right?
100%. And I think a good technique to disarm you and disarm the other person when you're like starstruck is even saying like, hey, I recognize myself feeling a little awkward right now because like, I really idealize you, but I just want to let you know that I really want to connect with you in the more authentic ways, but I feel kind of nervous right now.
Ah, beautiful, Edric. Yeah. And that takes a lot of, that's vulnerability, right? And vulnerability creates connection. if it's the right amount, as we talked about, if you're not going too deep with it. And I think I remember I was meeting at the same event. I had met Layla Martin, which is she's one of these big Tantra teachers, and I was a little like, everyone loves her and knows her, and I was just curious because I'm like, how come? And so I just went to her, I was like, hey, I'm curious why every girl I date spends thousands of dollars on your program. I'm curious if you're legit or not. And she like laughed about that, but it was true. I was actually like, because like all the women I was dating were literally spending, thousands of dollars on all her programs. And it's like, who is this girl? And why are they spending so much money? Why is every woman I know like doing this? But it's leading with sometimes that playfulness or authenticity. Or in your case, hey, I'm feeling a little nervous to talk to you because I appreciate your work so much. My God, if I heard that, I'd be like, that's so sweet. Thank you. Yeah. That's really sweet. Thank you. And it leaves room to seeing that awkwardness there. Okay, so wow, yeah, amazing. I love where this conversation is going, man. How do we bring it back? So we really have stopped on the whole, and we're still on the opening the container, right? Okay. I think we're still on opening the container. We haven't. Okay. The event hasn't even happened, Edric. Okay, welcome to our community building masterclass workshop. Please download the accompanying PDF. Okay, so as we open the container, invite the small vulnerability of being seen, right? So again, just to summarize, the more people there are, the shorter it needs to be. Anything that goes over 45 minutes is too long, period. Ideally 30 minutes total. And the first round around should just be really short and easy, right? Yeah. If we're doing more deeper connection stuff and it's the right time event, we start going into more dyadic work, which is we start pairing people together and asking them increasingly more vulnerable questions, right? In the beginning, it's really light and easy. I like doing things where you just have people walking around and you stop, you just introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Joe. I'm Edric. I'm from Bali. Great. And then you just move on and do that with 4 or 5 people. You actually have them do this. This gets it a little bit more into authentic relating techniques, but I use a lot of these in my events if it feels, if it's that type of event. And then later on, hey, stop in front of someone, ask a question, 30 seconds, I'll let you know. And then they can kind of go. That's one way to do it. But that's more of an event that's intended for networking, connection. If it's just like a dinner party, generally not doing that, right? Yeah. Maybe one prompt of going around. Maybe that's all you need to do. And then some points of connection. And in an event, I always think about the art of the event is the expansion and the contractions. So meaning, in the beginning, we're all as one. Everyone is in one group. Then we need time to expand so everyone can go in, have their little one-on-ones or little smaller groups conversations. That's where people get to know each other, feel the connection, the vibe, whether that's friendships, networking, maybe a little bit of flirting, whatever. And then at some point we want to bring them back into contraction, right? And that could be something, it could be an announcement, it could be a performance, poetry, it could be a little game, it could be a little exercise. Is there anything else that you do with that?
Yeah, I like that. I like the combination of having a big group, a shared group moment, because I think that's when people come together, feel that sense of belonging, bigger, being part of something bigger than themselves. Yet, it's hard to go deep in such a big group. So that's what you do with breaking them into dyads or smaller groups with deeper prompts where they can go deeper. And it's also less intimidating to share something to be witnessed by 2 people versus 30 people. And then having that moment when they come back together again, I like to ask them to share reflection, what emerged from those conversations in your smaller groups. And then some people feel inspired, will share something that will benefit everyone as well, because they can take away the lesson or the insights. I like what you mentioned earlier about activating your community members when they have talents, when they have something to share. And because I also see our job as community builders is so building platforms for our friends to shine. And they need the stages. You can be the best fire performers, but if you don't have an audience to show it to, then it doesn't mean anything. So, and your job as being like connectors is like building the audience for them, building the stage for them, and like and giving them the opportunity to shine. And everyone benefits from that. Something that I learned recently, talking about times and groups at birthdays, I like to get people to go and run and share appreciation about that person. I often think when it's too big, sometimes it ends up being too long, but I found actually there's a nice time, average time where like actually people really love seeing their friend being showered with love actually. It's not always like when it's long, like people will disengage. It really depends on the context, especially for like birthdays, when people are all there to celebrate and cherish this particular person. They all want to love, and I think, and then the energy of love is something that is very uplifting, that everyone wants to be in.
Yeah, it's true. I have a very birthday. If I was a leader of any call, it would be the birthday call. I love birthdays because one, you get to get people to do whatever you want to do or whoever the birthday person wants to do. Two, people love that because they're trying something new. Like my friend's doing this thing called herping on Sunday. Helix is doing a herping event, which is you go out into the jungle and find nocturnal reptiles and catching snakes with your hands and things like that. And like, apparently it's a little scary and slightly dangerous. And it's like, that's what he wants to do for his birthday. But, for me, I've done everything throwing, festivals of 1,200 people on the biggest super yachts in North America to festival, 3-day weekend festivals I do often, to one year I took 8 people out into the jungle to do primitive survival where we just survived and like learned how to survive with a machete and we had literally building our own huts to sleep in, and there was scorpions and shit. It was cool. So it's like, or, I had a friend, I think it was my friend Ruben, he got everyone to jump out of an airplane in onesie costumes. Like literally like flying squirrels and flying cows skydiving out of little planes. And it's like, that's why birthdays are amazing, is you can invite people to the thing that you love the most. Yeah. And some people are just like, I want a quiet little thing. Some people are like, I want to celebrate and be put on a throne and thrown up and down. But one of the rituals that we do that you're talking about is we lay someone down in the middle on something soft, and everyone takes turns saying all the amazing things that they love about this person. And if it's a big group, we popcorn style. If it's a small group, we go in a circle and we just take the time to love them. And sometimes there's some touch. If they like that, maybe it's like a massaging their arms and legs, and now all their friends are loving up on them and giving them physical touch and saying all these beautiful things. And we often buy, tons of flowers. We just learned not the purple flowers because it stains the shit out of everything. So now, and then we bury them, and while we're saying things, we're putting flower petals all over them and burying them in flower petals, And it's such a beautiful sort of tradition in a birthday. And I actually was doing this in New York before I came to Bali. Now it's much more, it's much more hippie. We got the flowers and, and there's a lot more breathing involved, but
it's sighing out loud.
Yeah, the Ubudhian sounds, right? But yeah, what a beautiful way to, and also that creates belonging in community because you're gathering around the love of a person, right? Everyone loves that person. And that's like a central spoke where community is created around that. I mean, honestly, that's the only thing I ever go to anymore is birthdays anymore. Because, once you know a certain amount of people and birthdays and weddings, you're here right back in Bali for a wedding, actually, a Keeb's wedding. So, and he's doing a birthday festival, which is perfect. Yeah. It was amazing. So, I think we're starting to run out of time. So I think, is there anything that we haven't said that you're like, oh my God, we have to talk about this?
You brought up something earlier about like conflicts and drama within the community and what it's like to be a community daddy. Because I think it comes with responsibility when you bring all these people together, like people look up to you in some way. especially with being someone who is so you advocate for meaningful, deep connections. So people see you as like this, oh, like you're really good with like communication and relating and all that stuff. Many people have come to me to like help them solve conflicts, or come to me to solve their problems. And in the beginning, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed fixing things, and like I enjoyed being useful. But eventually, I also learned to set some boundaries, to know when is too much. Of course, I will still like contribute in some ways that if I feel that it's right, but I don't want to get involved in the drama. For example, I would stay as neutral as possible. And also not to be mixing, like when they share information with me, and try not to also leak it out to like other people. So like there's a lot of responsibility that comes to building communities. I mean, that person, if people see it as a glue of a group.
Yeah, this is something that I've realized over, this 30 years of community building is people see you as a community daddy, and they come to you with their problems, all of their problems. Whether money problems, someone borrowed money from someone else, interpersonal skills, relationships, this guy did this to her or to him. And there's a lot of interpersonal things, because community is just a collection of connections, right? So now it's an art form to know what you can own as a community leader, someone that is respected and looked up to. And especially when it comes to mental health issues, it can be really difficult. When it comes to romantic relationships, it can be really difficult. What I've learned with this is I'm actually doing less mediation now than I did before. Before I was mediating everything, and it was fucking exhausting, right? I'm not a professional psychiatrist. And now what I'll do is encourage them to have a conversation together. And depending on the type of community it is, if it's super small, like when I had my co-living community, the idea was get them to talk among themselves. And if it can't be resolved, then we might come in to step in, me and my partner. And if it's a mental health, we get them actual professional help with that, because you need to be careful not to try to solve everyone's problems. And there's a whole nother conversation, which is when do you eject someone from the community? Because as a community leader, we need to create safety, specifically for the women first. When we create safety for the women, it actually creates a lot more safety for everyone. So I think that's a different topic for another podcast, but an important one of making sure as a community leader, protect your energy, know what is yours to mediate, to step into, and when it's yours to let go of and say, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And really encourage you to go have a vulnerable conversation, have a difficult conversation with them. I have a PDF on the art of a difficult conversation. Feel free to download that. It'll walk you through how to do that, because we need to be having those difficult conversations, especially within community, especially if you're going to see them over and over again. Because a little poison in the well of the community will poison the whole well. So it is definitely an art form to know when you need to keep someone away with love. And when there's to give correction with love. Hey, this thing happened. I'd love to hear your side of it. And, let's talk about this. Or reprimand. Hey, let me hear your side. Okay. It sounds like there's some consent break here. There was some things here. And I really need you to be really cautious of this going forward. If this keeps happening, I can't have you part of this community, and I really want you here. Right?
Yeah.
There needs to be difficult conversations with that.
It's hard to, I think establishing that boundaries is really valuable for us to not overextend ourselves. And at the same time, it is challenging because whatever conflicts that they have with an existing community member, like you said, it impacts the energy and the dynamic of the communities, especially when they're going to see each other often. They're going to be in the same containers regularly. People can sense that when there's like conflict. Why do people become a little bit more distant from this person? So it's hard to not to care because it impacts what you have built. It's like, so you kind of seeing as a collective, it's like your baby. So, and for me, I always want everyone to get along. And I think I also have learned the hard way to how to let go and to not force people to be good with each other if it's not meant to be. Because I'm someone who like forgive easily. It's hard to like get offended for me, and everyone has different tolerance. It's something I have to learn. Like if I vibe with this person, doesn't mean that person will vibe the other person, and if they don't vibe with each other, doesn't mean I don't have to vibe with them either. And choosing to not to get drawn to someone's energy and stand on your ground in terms of how you view the connection to different people.
Yeah, beautiful. Edric, thanks for being with us. This felt like a very useful masterclass in community building. And we got through maybe the first small beginnings. So this is a good one. I'll probably put this very early on in the community building podcast. And you guys, if you want more of this, I have a bunch of other amazing people who are dedicating their lives to building community. Hit the subscribe button. I have a lot of free tools on my website, theconnectionmap.com, a lot of free workshops, etc. And Edric, how do people find you?
Yeah, people can find me on Instagram. I think I'm really active there. Edric Subur. Check out Wormspace if you're building teams and communities. So we automate the facilitation of this connection exercises.
And if you have, what kind of company would you want to use Wormspace?
Yeah, right now we work with large companies like 1,000 employees and above, because we see that's the biggest challenge. When you have like smaller teams, it's still easy for you to manage the connections among people, but like when it starts to scale, that's when it's really hard to maintain the sense of connected culture. That's when that having that form of automation, just like when you have your broadcasting tool, could really come in handy to ensure that everyone has that space to be seen and to be heard.
So if you're in a company, 1,000 people plus, you're noticing there could be better connections inside the company, check out Wormspace.
Yeah.
And that will just make everything better, have better connections, which honestly, better connections creates more productivity, which creates more money, right? That's probably the sell on that. And we know that to be true for sure.
Yeah.
People stick around, higher retention rates, more excited about being there, more sense of purpose, works harder.
More resilient as well. When adversity hits, you're caring, you can trust your peers, you care more for your colleagues. So connection is the foundation for everything.
Yeah, so true. I love that. Edric, thank you for being here. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. Have an amazing day and go out, build a community, build something small. Try it, message us. We love hearing stories. If you tried something that we talked about, message us, let us know, hey, I did the thing and it worked and now I have a little community in Argentina and it's so beautiful. It warms our heart.
And when you start a birthday call, let Joe know because he will be very proud to have a conglomerate of birthday calls around the world.
This is very true. All right, guys, have a great night. Ciao.